Hello and welcome back to the Advanced English podcast by I Speak English. My name's Hayley, and in this podcast we explore big ideas, cultural debates, and maybe slightly uncomfortable questions, all the while helping you to build the kind of vocabulary and fluency you need for C1 Advanced and C2 Proficiency. So if you're preparing for Cambridge exams, or you simply just want to sound more natural or nuanced and confident when you speak English, you're absolutely in the right place. But before we get into today's episode, just a quick favour from you. If you enjoy these episodes, please do like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It genuinely helps more advanced learners to find it, especially those working towards C1 and C2. And it means I can keep creating longer, deeper discussions like this one. So today, we're talking about British culture, or specifically culture shock for those who come into Britain from outside of the UK. And it's kind of a bit ironic, really, to talk about culture when we're talking about Britain, because a lot of British people don't really believe that we have one. We just think that we're normal. You know, we just assume that everyone queues and everyone apologises and says sorry when you bump into them, because that's just basic manners, right? But then someone moves to the UK from abroad, and within a few weeks they're like, why are you all like this? And honestly, it's fair enough, because, you know, culture shock, it doesn't usually hit you in one dramatic, cinematic moment. Like, it's not like you step off the plane and suddenly violins start playing and everything feels all alien. It's subtler than that. It's like death by 1,000 social misunderstandings. Like, it's standing in a bakery or a coffee shop waiting patiently for someone to acknowledge you, only to realise there's no queue, there never was a queue, and everyone else is just kind of leaning forward or shouting at the waiter confidently, making eye contact with the staff. That was my first week in Italy. When I moved there, I stood there in a coffee shop waiting very Britishly, assuming some invisible moral system would kick in, and it didn't. And that's when I realised something, you know, that queuing is not universal. Especially not in Italy, also not really in Spain. But in Britain, queuing, you know, it's not just practical, it's ethical. It's almost sacred, to be honest. If someone skips the queue, there's like a collective emotional reaction. Like, you might not feel it. Like, people won't shout at you, because God forbid we cause a scene. But you will hear the tutting, you might even hear eye rolling so loud that you actually manage to hear it. Maybe someone subtly, you know, mutters, there's a queue. You know, there's this passive-aggressive shifting of weight. It's social order in action. But in other countries, you know, the system's different. Not worse, not rude, just different. It's more fluid, it's more assertive, more kind of, you know, you snooze, you lose sort of thing. And that's the thing about culture shock. It's not that people are behaving badly, it's that your internal operating system suddenly doesn't match the environment. Like, for example, when I moved to Spain, oh my god, the volume nearly finished me off. And I mean, I was moving from Italy to Spain, so I was used to people talking loud, but oh my god, it's like next level. Like, I don't mean that dramatically, it's just, I mean like my nervous system had to recalibrate to the Spanish level of noise. Like in Britain, public spaces, they're relatively subdued. You know, on a train, people lower their voices. In a cafe, you know, conversations like hum quietly in the background. If someone laughs too loud, half the room, like, silently registers it. You know? But in Spain, nah, the opposite. Like, windows are open, conversations, you know, overlapping, families at full emotional capacity at like 10:30 on a Tuesday, kids playing right outside your window, screaming, shouting, grandparents are arguing, you know, animatedly about something that sounds pretty urgent, but is probably, you know, they're just talking about olive oil or tomatoes or something, I don't know. You know, at first, I felt like I was permanently overstimulated. And I thought something was wrong. I thought people were angry, but they weren't angry. They were just alive. You know, and then after a few months, it stopped feeling so loud. I got used to it. Started feeling normal. It was just like white noise in the background. You know, it was warm. energetic. And then I went back to the UK and suddenly everything seemed kind of muted. It was like someone had just turned the volume down. I thought, oh my God, have I gone deaf? Like everything was so quiet. You know, you kind of realize culture shock, it's not about the new place being strange. It's just your baseline expectations shifting. And this happens everywhere, like not just Britain versus Southern Europe, but Americans often come to the UK and they're shocked by what they interpret as like coldness. But we think we're being polite and giving people space. They think we're being distant. Meanwhile, British people in the US often feel kind of like ambushed by friendliness. Like a waiter asks, you know, like a waiter might ask you like, hey guys, how are you doing tonight? And then, you know, you like freeze. It's like, are we suddenly a team? Why are we sharing this like emotional energy before we've like, why are we sharing this emotional energy before we've even ordered a starter? You know, like Germans moving to the UK as well sometimes find the indirectness quite maddening. Like in the UK, we soften everything. We wrap criticism in cotton wool. If we say, oh, I'm not sure that's quite right, it might mean actually that is absolutely wrong. But we just can't bring ourselves to say it plainly. Like we'd rather hint or nudge someone. And that drives some people up the wall, especially if they're from a country that's more direct. But on the other side, British people in Germany sometimes experience the opposite shock. Direct feedback can feel really brutal if you're not used to it. There's no cushioning, there's no verbal bubble wrap. It's just the truth, delivered very efficiently. And you have to learn not to take it personally. I think about Japan. You know, I remember, I went to Japan last year and it's like you suddenly feel like you're being really loud. Even again, British people, they're not that loud. They're pretty quiet when you compare them to other places in Europe. But you go to Japan and suddenly you feel like you take up a lot of space and you're too loud. You're too like physically expansive. You're like hyper aware of your own presence. And if you're doing something wrong all the time, because Japan has so many rules, and there's all this social harmony in everything. So, in Britain we think we're reserved, and then you see what true quiet looks like when you go to a country like Japan. Or France, where British people sometimes feel like infantilized because we insist on smiling and apologizing, constantly. And the French, they're not being rude, they just don't perform politeness in the same exaggerated way. They just value sincerity over cheerfulness. British people value smoothing things over. And that's the kind of key phrase, really, like smoothing things over. British culture is essentially a masterclass in not making a fuss. Like if your meal's wrong in a restaurant, there's a very real possibility you're going to eat it anyway if you're British, because you will internally register that it's incorrect. And you'll perhaps mention it quietly to the person you're with, but you will absolutely complain about it later to someone else. But you won't say anything to the waiter, because making a fuss just feels excessive. But in Italy and Spain, the wrong dish arrives, it's addressed immediately. Not angrily, not dramatically, just directly. This isn't what I ordered. Problem solved. The first time I saw that happen, I was mortified. I thought we were about to be thrown out, but no one batted an eyelid. It was normal. And slowly you learn that your idea of politeness is just not universal. It's just kind of cultural conditioning. Eating times as well. Oh my God, that one nearly broke me when I first moved to Italy and Spain. So in Britain, like, dinner can happen at 5 p.m, 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6, sometimes earlier. In some parts of Europe, like, that's borderline criminal. Like, someone in Spain once told me, like, okay, let's go out for dinner at 9:30. I thought they meant like drinks, but no, that meant sitting down to order food at 9:30. At 7 p.m, my body was screaming. By 8 p.m, I'd already mentally put on my pajamas. But eventually something strange happened. I adapted. I stopped being hungry at 6 p.m. I mean, I'm working at 6 p.m. I still have lessons. My body clock shifted. And now when someone suggests dinner at 6 in the UK, I think, like, are you ill? Or is this like, are we having a snack? Yeah, I get like reverse culture shock now. But, your sense of normal is kind of pretty flexible, really, depending on where you are. Even personal space, again, in Britain, we stand back. We don't touch people much. A handshake is fine. A hug requires context. Like, you need to know the person, I would say, to hug them. Kissing on the cheek when you've met them, absolutely not. That's far too intimate. But obviously in parts of, Italy and Spain, 2 kisses, standard. When you don't even know the person, it's like, oh, hello, I'll give you a kiss. It's not flirtatious. It's not deep. It's just hello. And the first time someone leaned in to kiss me, like, I panicked. I was like, I don't know which side to go. Do I commit? Do I hover? It's like this split-second hesitation that probably made the situation worse. And something even worse when I moved from Italy to Spain. So in Italy, I was already used to the kissing, but then I moved to Spain. And then when they go to kiss you, they start on the opposite side. So in Spain, you go left. In Italy, you go right. So I was used to kissing people on the right first, moved to Spain. And the first time I went to kiss someone, I almost kissed them on the lips like 3 times because I was like, oh God, wrong way. So, yeah, greetings can be difficult, But then, after a while, you do get used to it. It stops feeling invasive. It starts to feel just more, warm, and then you return home, you go back to the UK, and again, it's like someone shakes your hand stiffly from a distance or just waves at you, and it does feel a bit cold, It's a bit of a weird one. Speaking of cold, the weather. Another big topic in the UK. British people talk about the weather constantly. Foreigners think we're obsessed. We're not obsessed. We're just, I don't know, cautious. The weather's safe. It's neutral ground. Nobody falls out over cloud cover. Oh, it's a bit chilly today. Yeah, I suppose it'll brighten up later. That's not meaningless chatter. That's like emotional diplomacy. It's how we test the waters, basically. It's how we circle the runway before the landing anywhere person. But funnily enough, here in Spain, it rained for a good 3 weeks straight. And it was all people could talk about. All they spoke about on the news, everyone I talked to, all over social media, it was just the weather, the weather, the weather. And I'm like, there you go. When it rains so much, that's all you have to talk about because it's annoying. But, in some cultures, people, their conversation jumps straight into, I don't know, politics or philosophy or, small talk can seem quite shallow. But it's not shallow, it's kind of protective. It's more like a coping mechanism, People think we talk about the weather because it's boring. We don't. We talk about the weather because it's predictable. It's mildly disappointing, deeply relatable, changes constantly. Lets us bond over the shared inconvenience without revealing anything too personal. If it's raining, we sigh together. If it's sunny, we act like we've collectively won something. If it snows, the entire country collapses. Trades stop, schools shut, and everyone just posts the same picture of their garden. Covered in snow on social media. But, it just gives us something safe to react to emotionally. It just allows you the enthusiasm, but without the vulnerability, I would say. It can be dramatic about the wind or complain about the drizzle. And you can celebrate a heat wave like it's a national achievement. And if you're from somewhere with stable weather, where it's sunny most of the year or properly cold in winter without the constant indecision, then obviously that can feel absurd. But in Britain, the weather shapes your mood. Shapes your humour, it shapes conversation. It's like a shared personality trait. We don't just experience it, like we narrate it. And I didn't realise how much until I moved somewhere sunny. And suddenly there was less to comment on. The sky was blue again and again and again. And I find myself kind of sometimes missing the drama of a few grey clouds rolling in, which is possibly the most British sentence I think I've ever said. But moving on. Big things to talk about concerning British culture is the drinking culture. Okay, because this one might confuse people more than anything else. So British people, we can be quite emotionally restrained for most of the week, and then Friday arrives. And suddenly there's like a collective agreement that we're just going to let our hair down properly. Like in Mediterranean countries, alcohol, it is a part of life. Like you drink wine with food, you sip it slowly. It's kind of integrated into the meal. But in Britain, historically at least, drinking is kind of more of an event. It's not just a glass of wine. It's, we're going out. And if someone says out, that means a commitment. Like that means you've got to put heels on. It means, making questionable life choices at 4 o'clock in the morning. So for someone moving to the UK, that shift can be kind of jarring. You know, the same colleague who barely speaks about their personal life on a Monday might be confessing their deepest insecurities over tequila shots by Saturday. It's like alcohol just temporarily suspends this emotional restraint that British people have. And for cultures where emotional expression is already normal, this can look quite extreme. You know, why wait until you're 3 drinks in to say what you mean? But that's just part of Britishness, you know. We suppress, and then we release. We hold it together, and then we go slightly feral, let's say. It's not elegant, but it is kind of embedded in the culture, unfortunately. Or, yeah, swings and roundabouts. You know, you've got positives and negatives of everyone. Something else that students often say to me, if I get students from who live in the UK, they often talk about the houses, like how different the houses are. In the UK. So one big complaint is the separate taps that we have. I don't understand this. Like, again, now I live outside the UK. For me, it's also weird. But I cannot overestimate how shocking separate taps are to people who didn't grow up with them. So if you go into any bathroom or kitchen, we have 2 taps at the sink. One is hot, one is cold. There isn't like just one handle that you turn. It's 2. And one is either like freezing cold and the other's absolutely scalding hot, and there's no middle ground. Like, you just have to choose which one you prefer. And obviously foreigners look at this and they're like, you know, you built an empire, but you couldn't mix water? Like, honestly? And that's fair. It's one of those, I don't know, historical plumbing quirks that we just accepted, you know, we adapted to. And we just learn to wash our hands very quickly. You know, the same goes for the absence of plug sockets in bathrooms. Again, very shocking. A lot of my students say this to me, like, why? Why isn't there plug sockets in a bathroom? You know, pretty much everywhere else outside the UK, this exists. In Britain, it's considered more of like a death wish. Like me, myself, even now, yes, I have plug sockets in my bathroom because I live in Spain. But I still don't like using them because I think, oh my God, I'm going to get electrocuted. Because there's water, you know, it's a humid room where I've just taken a shower. There might be water on the plug socket on the outlet. But yeah, and you'll often find that British people, they don't dry their hair in the bathroom for that reason. They have to go in their bedroom or, I don't know, somewhere where there's a mirror with a plug socket in it. So that's one difference. Other differences in houses, carpets everywhere, including in bathrooms. I feel like this is a bit of an older thing, but yes, in British houses you will still find carpet, like wall-to-wall carpet in bathrooms. I know, it's disgusting, it's unhygienic. I find it, like, kind of vomit-worthy, but it does happen, I don't know why. Kettles, have to have a kettle. That was one thing, again, when I moved to Italy and Spain, I was like, I moved into, a furnished home and there was no kettle in the kitchen. And I'm like, what's going on? How do I make a cup of tea in the morning? And for like a few months, I was just boiling water in a pan on the stove because I didn't have a kettle. It was madness. But yeah, you have to have a kettle in a British home. Other things, not necessarily related to home, but yeah, talking about tea, like we insist on having tea all the time. It's like you wake up, you have a cup of tea. You get ready for work. Just before you leave work for work, you have a cup of tea. You get to work, you have a cup of tea. You have your lunch, you have a cup of tea. Come home, you have a cup of tea. I don't know, maybe you invite friends round, then you have a cup of tea with your friends. Anytime there's like a break in the day, you have to have a cup of tea and some biscuits. I think I used to drink like 10 to 12 cups of tea when I lived in the UK. It's a bit too much. What else is there? Oh, well, language, obviously. We haven't even spoke about language yet, have we? Yes, slang, British slang. Oh my God. So obviously you probably learn English through a textbook, but textbook English is not similar to British English, unless you have a textbook on slang, or phrasal verbs. But even then, you will struggle if you go to the UK because you feel like, oh my God, I need to learn English all over again. And different parts of the UK have different slang. So like I'm from the north of England, northwest. So if you move to like Manchester or Liverpool and someone says, "You're right, love," They're not proposing to you. They're not flirting. They're not asking you if you're okay. They're just saying hello. If someone says to you, oh, that's grim, it doesn't mean it's horrifying. It just means it's kind of unpleasant, or they don't like it. Sound. The word sound means good. If something's sound, then it's good, it's fine. Something's doing your head in, then it's annoying you. Something's a bit dodgy, then it's like risky or a bit strange. And then obviously there's the word sorry, which we also use for other things, not only to apologise for. So for example, if you go sorry, it means I didn't hear you. So like, can you repeat that? Sorry means I exist, like as if someone, I don't know, closed a door on you or bumped into you or something like that. Then you'd be like, sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of different meanings of sorry. Sorry about that. If someone says sorry about that, it means nothing really happened, but I'm acknowledging the possibility that I might have done something wrong. So for someone who learned English formally, if you learn English formally, it can feel quite destabilizing. Like, you think you understand the language, and then someone from the Northwest is like, oh, it's chucking it down, and you're wondering like what's being thrown around, but actually they're saying it's raining. So again, you have to start like picking up the language again. But then once you're there a while, you do pick it up. You might start saying cheers instead of thank you, or I don't know. You'll probably start understanding sarcasm a bit more, but without panicking. That's when you realize, you're not just surviving through culture shock, you're kind of integrating now. And that's something I kind of find quite fascinating as, an immigrant myself. I've not lived in the UK for maybe 12 years now. And it's just kind of how quickly humans actually adapt to their environment. Again, the first time someone kissed me on both cheeks, I was like, whoa, I kind of froze. Now it barely registers. It's just something normal. First time I hear someone, shouting in a cafe at midnight, I assume there was a fight. Now it's just, they're discussing dinner. Culture shock, it can feel intense at the beginning because you're just hyper aware of everything. You're constantly self-monitoring. Am I too quiet? Am I too blunt? Am I too reserved? Am I coming across in a certain way? That's like cultural fatigue. Like the mental exhaustion of adjusting your behavior all day is very fatiguing. But slowly your nervous system settles and the unfamiliar just becomes normal. And then one day, you wake up and you're not even thinking about it anymore. You just exist again, which is in a strange way the goal, because culture shock, it isn't about proving where you belong. It's more about expanding what belonging can look like. So if you move to the UK and you find us kind of emotionally cautious, weather-obsessed, pub-dependent, plumbing confusing, linguistically chaotic people, then just give it time. Because eventually you'll find yourself like apologising to a chair that you bumped into, and that's when you know that you've really settled in. Okay, right, I'm going to leave it there for this episode then. Once again, if you do enjoy these episodes, if you find it useful, please do like, subscribe, and share the podcast. The transcript is in the description along with the vocabulary list for this episode as well. Make sure you download that. It's free from the description. And yeah, make sure that you subscribe. Keep coming back every week for more episodes. And I'll see you in another episode soon. All right, bye.